It is the playoffs. So it is a playoff mountain.
That makes sense. We get it.
Playoff experience. Playoff resume. For good or for bad, will determine where you fall on the playoff mountain.
That makes sense. We get it.
Well, I'm giving a preamble because
I already did that.
I understand you did all that, but people were distracted by your shocking physique. I didn't think this mountain was controversial when I submitted it. Wild said it's the worst thing he's ever seen. Bottom row, 3 guys who have never started playoff games, and 1 guy who doesn't have a good playoff start this decade. Simple. Jaden Daniels, amazing year. On Brew's ballot, gonna run away with Offensive Rookie of the Year, even though Brock Bowers set every record you can set for a rookie tight end, and deservingly, 0 playoff starts. Bo Nix, coming off an unbelievable game against a team that a lot of people believe is the best backups in football, Kansas City Chiefs, 0 playoff starts. Sam Darnold, been in the league forever, 0 playoff starts. They've stayed at the bottom of the mountain. Russell Wilson, more on him in a bit. 4th row. All of these guys have postseason experience. Little hit and miss. Lamar, a lot of postseason experience. 1 above average game. 4 horrendous games. Justin Herbert, 1 game of playoff experience. If you look at the box score and the final score, it was. Yeah. If you watch the game, it was an A+ first half and it's D- or an F second half. Jalen Hurts, a lot of playoff experience, only 1 actual excellent playoff game, and it came in a loss in the Super Bowl. That's his only truly really good playoff game. If you remember their playoff run leading up to it, he didn't have to do much, nor did he do much. And CJ Stroud similarly. CJ has 1 really good playoff game, 1 pretty poor playoff game, and is building his way, we would think going into this year towards building the resume. Don't know if it's going to work out for him. 3rd row, Baker Mayfield. 4 career playoff games, 10 touchdowns, 3 picks, averages 30 points per game. 3 of those games have been on the road, nearly 300 yards per game, a 100 passer rating, 2-2. Jared Goff, 9 playoff games. Averages 275 yards per game in last year's postseason, nice. 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. Jordan Love was the toughest one. We really debated a long time between Hurts and Love, but Jordan Love, an A+ game in a win, which is something Jalen Hurts doesn't have, and then what I would call a subpar but not horrific game in round 2 against the Niners. Top 2 rows, self-explanatory. Josh Allen has an excellent statistical playoff resume, and really what has killed his playoff resume is he's run into the greatest quarterback I've ever seen 3 of the last 4 postseasons, hasn't been able to beat him. Hard to really hold that much against him there. And then there's Matt Stafford, who in his career in the postseason has 15 touchdowns, 6 picks, a 102 rating, averages more than 300 yards per game, and last year in the playoffs game that they lost, threw for 370, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a 121 rating. Is a consistent playoff performer dating back to his time in Detroit. Had good playoff numbers even though the team couldn't win. And then obvious, who's atop Mahomes Mountain, postseason edition, a guy who is, how does Patrick Mahomes rank in playoff history in a bunch of categories? Let's see. Oh yeah, first in everything.
That's pretty good.
It's a very self-explanatory mountain.
That's a good one.
In fact, I was a little worried that because we only have 14 guys instead of the regular 32, and because it was so obvious, this segment would be too short. So we might have to, stretch, as they say in TV.
Okay, let's talk about this. This is actually really funny because first off, the best touchdown to interception ratio actually belongs to Josh Allen. He's got the best touchdown to turnover ratio in the history of the league. So. Of all time. So there you go with that one. That's just a little aside there. But this is pretty absurd for many different reasons. Many different reasons. First off, we already know it's failed. Josh Allen is not Josh Allen, and it's not running into Patrick Mahomes. It's his defense. Okay, it was his defense, his receivers dropping balls, missing field goals, poor coaching. So, if you want to give all that credit to Patrick Mahomes, yeah, you go do that. Because Patrick Mahomes had something to do with Josh Allen losing against the Bengals in the snowstorm when the Bills had like zero game plan and just said, "Hey, Josh Allen, please try your best." That makes sense. Also, you show those playoff stats for Patrick Mahomes. Go do Super Bowl stats. Patrick Mahomes has 5 interceptions in 4 Super Bowls. Has a passer rating of I think it's in the 80s. Now, again, to be fair, if this is strictly playoff edition, I 1,000%, let me say this again, 1,000% Patrick Mahomes deserves to be at the top. And I've argued throughout the regular season that he should not be at the top. Patrick Mahomes, without a shadow of a doubt, for just the playoff edition, should be number 1. But look at all those stats. Looks pretty good, right? But, Patrick Mahomes is such a big-time player. We just want to use stats and stuff and not talk about the team, not talk about defense, nothing about that, no coaching, nothing. We just want to talk about Patrick Mahomes. Well, it's weird because this is now his Super Bowl stats. Seems like everything just gets significantly lower, like a 65% completion percentage, an 85 rating, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Oh, that's not very good, averaging 267 yards per game. I mean, look at it. They all completely crash, plummet. If this was anyone else, Nick would use this as a frame of reference as to why they choke. They don't show up in the big game. They can't handle the pressure. I mean, in his first Super Bowl win, he had a 78.1 passer rating, which they always love to use as this bottom line. This is what shows how great a quarterback is. They always do that. All right. I mean, he had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in that game against Jimmy Garoppolo. Because he's talking about how, Josh Allen just running into Patrick Mahomes. Well, he had to play Jimmy Garoppolo. Seems like a benefit. Then he went up against Tom Brady, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That ain't good. But the O-line. Oh, so you're saying that the team matters then? You're saying the team around him then contributes to his ability to win or lose? Interesting. Okay. Just keep that in mind, man. Keep that in mind. Against the Eagles, he threw for 182 yards. Nick, in this very episode, ripped Lamar Jackson, his great game against the Houston Texans, and said, "You think it was great that Lamar Jackson only threw for 100 and so yards and this and that? You really think that was considered a great game? Okay, he played one good half. He had a great second half. That's it." And him and Brew got in this big fight. He threw for 182 yards. Like what? If it's good for Patrick Mahomes, it should be good for Lamar Jackson. Like again, what are we doing here? Also, look at all these short, average yards per game. 6.8, 5.5, 6.7. I mean, he averages 6.5. Is it a little bit of a dink and dunk? A little bit of a dink and dunk offense? I don't know. I know this video, definitely people are going to be like, "This is proof you hate Patrick Mahomes. You hate Patrick Mahomes." No, Patrick Mahomes is special. I think Patrick Mahomes is great. I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the most amazing, most exciting quarterbacks I have ever seen in my entire life. But you know what? When you try to cook the books and try to throw all this weight on one side, you got to balance it out a little bit. And there's no more important game than the literal Super Bowl. And we can see that it's not perfection. It's not perfection. We can clearly see that. I mean, my goodness. It doesn't get any more real than this. Okay? Zoom it in. You can see it. All for your liking right there. But I don't want to just focus on Patrick Mahomes, of course, but we had to, get that out of the way. And again, let me say it one more time for the people who are going to be like, "You hate Patrick Mahomes. You hate Patrick Mahomes." He deserves to be at the top of the mountain. He deserves to be at the top of the mountain. Okay. Josh Allen, obviously up there, without a shadow of a doubt. Josh Allen balls, man. Josh Allen balls. He is not the problem for any of the failures that the Buffalo Bills have had in the playoffs. He absolutely balls. And let me just add some more fuel for the people that say that I'm a Patrick Mahomes hater. If Josh Allen was on the Kansas City Chiefs, he would have better stats than Patrick Mahomes and would have the same number of Super Bowl wins. The same number, because I don't think he would have been able to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think he would have been able to do better with the O-line. So I think he would have had better Super Bowl stats. But, we'll just leave it at that. And now, again, this is where things start to get really interesting. Because, again, we're just talking about the playoffs. Stafford was special, especially that first year with Sean McVay. That can't be denied. I mean, like, he played great ball. No-look passes, Super Bowl. I mean, like, he was special. He absolutely was special. And obviously, again, won the Super Bowl. So I think it's kind of fair to put him up there as well. And now this is where things get really messy. Because, again, Russ went to back-to-back Super Bowls. Jalen Hurts had one of the best performances in Super Bowl history. And if you want to talk about he's got lots of playoff history, first off, that first Super Bowl run, he didn't have to do a ton. That's not his fault. But he still played very clean, important football in the road to the Super Bowl. And then when they needed him, he carried the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay? And had one of the best statistical performances in Super Bowl history. That is a fact. Whether you want to agree with it or not, well, then you disagree with reality. It is a literal fact. Not an opinion. So that's just the reality of the situation. All right. And again, it would make sense that Daniels, Nicks, and Darnold would be at the bottom because they don't have playoff experience. So like that makes sense. No matter how great you think they're going to be, if we're going to follow the playoff rules, then it makes sense. And obviously, Nicks and Daniels being rookies and Darnold just not having the experience. But to put Hurts on there at the bottom, this just, which is essentially the bottom row, or even putting Russ at that bottom row, also does not make sense. Because again, when you talk about Hurts, if you say, well, he only had one good game in the Super Bowl, again, that first run, he didn't really have to do much necessarily for those first couple of games, still played fine, still played good enough, and then obviously balled out in the Super Bowl. The first time when he was in the playoffs, it was his first time in the playoffs, his first year as a starter. Like, again, why are you expecting him to be great in that moment, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Majority of quarterbacks' first playoff start does not look very good, okay? That's just how things unfold. And that team was far from great. There was no A.J. Brown at all. And that was Sirianni's first year as a head coach. And then last year, he was injured. His knee was messed up, which Nick even talked about. How he had to wear a big clunky brace. He dislocated his finger a week before, and A.J. Brown wasn't playing, and that whole team was nothing. Which then brings me back now to Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, you want to talk about all these juiced up numbers and how great he's played? He was able to take advantage of a failing, yes, I said it, a failing Philadelphia Eagles team that had no business being in the playoffs. They were injured. Half the team was ready to retire. They fired their defensive coordinator. I mean, like, they had Matt Patricia. I mean, like, it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. The coordinating was a disaster. Troy Aikman and Joe Buck said straight up, I've never seen a team quit. When we talked to them before the game even started, they were like, this team was clearly not ready and didn't want to play. Okay, that's what Troy Aikman and Joe Buck said themselves. There were so many missed tackles in that game. It was insane. Literally, Baker Mayfield could have thrown like 4 different interceptions in that game, and it was just sheer luck that it didn't happen. And so many of his yards, the vast majority of his yards, were after so many missed tackles. If you remember, like, the Eagles were essentially setting a record for like the most missed tackles and all the yards after catch. So if you want to give that all to Baker, be my guest. And guess what? He had a similar thing happen when he played the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, this game was wild. They just turned the ball. The Steelers turned the ball over. They had 4 interceptions. I remember this was the most cartoonish game ever. Okay? It was just turnover after turnover after turnover. Ben Roethlisberger threw the ball 68 times. Okay? The Browns kept having short field. I mean, like, I understand 3 touchdowns, and that makes it look this great game, but they feasted off of the Steelers, who were an absolute disaster. Okay, I remember that was the one game where I'm pretty sure it was like the first like Nickelodeon game, because I was like, you know, this will be a weird way to watch the game. Why not? I was with my cousin who's like not a big football fan, so I was like, yeah, we can watch this. This will be kind of a throwback and interesting. This was an absolute disaster for the Steelers. So yes, the you know, Baker Mayfield was able to play well against the Steelers, who absolutely imploded, as you can see. 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and the fumble, so 5 turnovers, which was, again, it was comically hilarious. It was literally like a cartoon. And then against the Eagles, who, as Nick put it, were the worst team in the NFL. That's what Nick said, that the Philadelphia Eagles last season, at the end of the season, from like week 13 onward, were the worst team in the NFL. So if you want to use that as a reference point to how Baker Mayfield played, again, by all means, be my guest. Because here's now Baker Mayfield going up against the Lions now. What did he do? 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, a QBR at 55.4, and a 94 rating. All right, so that's hardly anything to write home about and praise as this stellar performance. And no, I am not a Baker Mayfield hater, but it's just ridiculous when you put things in context. Just stop the madness. Just stop the madness, okay? I've already praised Baker Mayfield this season. Every single you know, mountain people always want to be like, you're such a Mahomes hater and such a Baker hater. It's just not true. It's just not true. You know, Lamar Jackson, I've repeatedly said, he needs to play better in the playoffs, but I also really, you know, he's got some of the other issues as, being banged up in the playoffs, his first year in the playoffs, you know, which obviously will hurt his numbers as well. I really disagree with everything that the Baltimore Ravens have done from a game plan perspective. I think last year, again, against the Kansas City Chiefs was indefensible. Also, if you want to talk about going up against the best defense in the NFL, which was the Kansas City Chiefs last year, that's going to hurt you as well. And some of your other stats and touchdowns and stuff like that are going to hurt you when someone like Zay Flowers is literally fumbling at the goal line, and then you have no run game whatsoever. Please show me the quarterback who plays great when you don't have the run game. I mean, you know, come on, man. Come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? This is just an absolute mess. Just an absolute mess, and we know it. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about this playoff edition of you know, Nick's quarterback tiers? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.